I think that Hizmet's ability to create spaces for persons from one culture or ethnic group or religion to meet persons of other ethnic groups, populations, religions, is a very positive thing. To Turkey, that Hizmet, the disaster relief, been asked since I took a trip to Turkey with scholars. My name is Lloyd Allen. I am a professor of theology at Mercer University's McAfee School of Theology. I'm also an ordained Christian minister. I have been to Turkey and had an opportunity to meet persons at numerous Hizmet institutions and activities, and also individuals who were business persons, farmers that were connected to the Hizmet movement, the volunteers of the Hizmet movement. I am not from Turkey, and I had some concerns. I'd not been in a Muslim country before, and I had some concerns about how I would be treated and how welcomed I would be. But those fears were allayed by the persons that I met who were part of the Hizmet movement. The general hospitality that I received, not only by the persons who were my hosts, but also by the general population. I had opportunity to have conversations, to meet with persons who didn't have any connection with Hizmet that I know of, and they also treated me with hospitality and were quite willing to have conversations about whatever I asked about. So I think that Hizmet's ability to create spaces for persons from one culture or ethnic group or religion to meet persons of other ethnic groups, populations, religions, is a very positive thing. I was impressed that the persons that we had contact with on this trip I made to Turkey, in which there were appointments set up that we would meet some people from Hizmet, I was impressed that it didn't feel like a political or professional organization at all. By professional, I mean something that had some ulterior motive or some other motive. It felt to me like genuine people who were citizens, who wanted to do something good for their country and their people out of their own religious motivations, and who had chosen Hizmet as a good way to do that. So it felt a little like being around people who might work, for instance, for Doctors Without Borders, or the other kinds of organizations that help people in the wider world. So I would encourage Hizmet to do what it can to make more contact with persons who don't know about them and who haven't been to Turkey and may have stereotypes of Muslim countries that are false. Hizmet, with the organizations that it has in the United States, has provided opportunities for me and for other persons that I know, and many that I don't know, to learn more about the culture and history of Turkey and of Islam. And I think that that is one of their biggest contributions here on, in terms of my life, which is as a college professor and a religion professor. The kind of dialogue that occurs at these places, we have conversations. I went to a meeting that talked about Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, and the conversations we had around the table were very helpful to me. So I believe that Hizmet has a real contribution to make in that part. I think Hizmet probably also may not be aware of the way that doing something in one of its local institutions here in Atlanta, the Atlantic Institute, for instance, has effects beyond that meeting. At the university that I attend, we, after going to some of the Atlantic Institute programs, we had an interfaith prayer conference in which scholars talked about the way that their faiths approached prayer. That's something, and it was very positive, very well attended. That's something that probably would not have happened had Hizmet not introduced a few of us to the movement, to ways of having conversation about interfaith dialogue. And so my guess is that there are many, many benefits that are spin-offs of what these organizations do in the United States. The Atlantic Institute is the closest association most of us here in Atlanta have with the Hizmet movement. And it is an organization that does a really good job of connecting different faiths in conversation and different political views, although there's nothing political about Hizmet that I can tell. I haven't been able to, I have not experienced any sense of a political agenda in Hizmet other than pro-democracy and freedom of speech kinds of things. But in the Atlantic Institute programs, one of them that I experienced was an opportunity to actually be in Turkey, to meet Turkish peoples, to observe Islamic worship, to learn the history of the place and the peoples. I would not have had that experience had it not been for the Atlantic Institute. Back at home, had I never gone on this trip to Turkey, I would also, if I had, and I have, attended Atlantic Institute programs, I would have had an opportunity to meet some persons of real integrity, both in their faith and in their worldview, who are valuable friends and allies in the kinds of basic ideals that all persons of goodwill have for the world. To have that experience that rises from an Islamic community or an Islamic base, at least in the ethnic and religious background of the Atlantic Institute, is very positive in our day and time when there's so much conflict between our cultures, Christian culture, Islamic culture. So I'm very pro-Atlantic Institute. I don't know of any other place like it. If there's another place that I could invite my friends to go to learn about the best of the heritage of Turkey and its history, then I don't know where that place would be. I learned some things such as the kind of openness that the Ottoman Empire had towards other religions when I was there at a Jewish museum. And those are things that most of the citizens of my territory here in the United States just don't know. Never been taught, just don't know. For instance, I had an opportunity through the Atlantic Institute on a trip to Turkey to learn things about the history of Turkey and the Islamic faith that I would not have had opportunity to learn any other way. The Atlantic Institute, I think, is the only opening that I would have had to make this kind of trip. And one of the things I learned, for instance, we went to a Jewish museum, and I learned that there were some things in the Middle Ages, for example, in which Jews were treated more justly in the Ottoman Empire than they were treated in the Western empires. And those are things I would not have known, and that my friends and co-workers don't know. And Atlantic Institute helps get that word out. And it's a good word. It's a positive thing. Along with all the other work that the Hizmet movement does, to help persons understand that there is a motive of goodwill that rises from Islamic faith that has some real overlap with the kinds of goodwill that's found in other religions, such as my own, is a very needed commodity in our day. I'm very impressed by Hizmet's ability to extend itself in education and its emphasis upon education.
I do think that the efforts to create schools all over the globe which reflect those values of dialogue, of openness, of diversity, and one of the best things that is being done in the name of the Hizmet movement.